All right, the first question comes from, comes from PJTV producers who ask, what did you learn in this election? I learned not to predict the outcome of elections. That's the first thing I learned. I also learned don't get your hopes up on elections, and I also learned that elections are, boy. Look, elections have consequences, and this election particularly is going to have particular consequences, and there's no way to deny it, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. I think it is an unmitigated disaster for this country, what happened last night. And I'm saying all of that only so that when I say the stuff I really want to say, you'll understand that I'm not just blowing sunshine at you. It's a catastrophe. Not just the re-election of Barack Obama, but the fact that we thought so many of these races would be close, and we were watching the results last night. I started seeing things that I didn't think necessarily that we would win, but things that I thought would be close getting called like early. I said, man, this wave is not breaking our way at all. So what I learned about elections, I'll get to what we learned about this election in a minute. But what we learned about an election is that all of our hopes and fears and anxieties and ambitions and everything that we want for the country and everything that we want for the next 4 years, all of that focuses down to that 3 or 4 hour period between when the polls close at 7 p.m. in the eastern states until when they call the election. All of this future anxiety and fear and all of this worry or all of this hope and optimism, whatever the case may be, all comes down to 3 hours. And that's almost more than people can take. It really is. It's almost more than people can take. So the first thing I would say to you is we lost a big election and everybody's hurting. And I understand the hurt. I do. I get it. But don't forget that losing the election does not mean that the country's over. It doesn't mean that we're all going to die, and it doesn't mean they're going to put us in camps. It means that we have serious, serious work to do. And if we don't do the work, then those things conceivably could happen downstream. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next year. It's probably not going to happen at all, primarily because the guy who just got reelected is kind of an incompetent boob. So there's that. But when I saw all of the heartbreak and all of the anxiety, and I had a lot of people I had to comfort last night. I had the dark day of my soul was Friday. We taped 4 of the Whittle shows in here, and I was virtually homicidal. But that was the Friday before the election, and I was feeling better over the weekend, and I went into the election prepared to lose, expecting to win, genuinely expecting to win. But when we didn't win, and it became obvious that we didn't win, I was in a room full of 350 conservatives in a bar that we'd sort of taken over, and the more other people got upset and the more dispirited they became, what is the word I'm looking for? The more elevated I became, the less it hurt. The more I saw our people shaking their heads or crying or saying it's all over, the less this election mattered to me, because then I realized that the most important thing, really, the most important thing is that you have to maintain your courage. And I was walking around to people last night. One guy in particular was a real stalwart fighter, and he was just heartbroken. And I said to him, I said, Jim, you don't get to be Winston Churchill in broad daylight. You only get to be Winston Churchill in the dark. You only get to be heroic and courageous when things are going wrong. So the time for courage is now. And as I've said many times in this studio, we look back on historical events like the Civil War or World War II or all of these things that were crises in our history, and we look back at them and we think, oh, well, this crisis happened and then we recovered from it, and it seems obvious and it doesn't really seem like such a big deal. But for the people who lived in this country between December 7th of 1941 and the Battle of Midway, 6, 7 months of utter despair, the country's going to be invaded. We're going to be bombed to death. And the Civil War and all this stuff, we've been through worse than the election of a jug-eared narcissist thug from Chicago. And we'll be able to defeat him too. I'm fully aware of the dangers and the threats that are coming, fully aware. We just have to keep on fighting. That's what we have to do. Fighting these people is like mowing the grass. It never ends. It's never going to be a point where we've defeated liberalism and progressivism and we can all just go home and barbecue. Never. Got to get up and mow the grass every day. That's what I learned from the election last night. I wish it had gone better, but it didn't. And the one promise I made to myself this morning was, actually last night before I went to bed, was that I am not going to waste a second of my life with looking backwards, recriminating, was Romney the right guy? Did he pick the right guy? I'm not going to do any of that. I thought Romney did the best campaign he did. It doesn't matter whether you think so or I think so. It's over, it's done. It's time to look forward. Take a break for a while and have a little party for yourself.